That's right. Orange and blue today on a sad day in Broncos country as Justin Simmons is released. A lot of fans out there wondering, Mace, why wasn't he traded? Well, here's a list I've compiled of released safeties. Keanu Neal, Justin Simmons, Jordan Poyer, Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs, just released. So the safety market, if you need a veteran safety, Mace, it's a little flooded out there.
It's a little flooded out there, and there were, there were others who were, going to be UFAs who were out there. It wasn't just guys released. I mean, you're looking at, you mentioned Jamal Adams because he's unrestricted, right? I mean, you've got quality out there. You've got younger players out there. You've got veterans out there. This was a supply and demand equation. And also, I think it's in the bigger picture worth examining that safety is not one of the core positions when it comes to overall team building. Perception is that you can find effective safeties for relatively lower cost, and you can find them outside of premium positions in terms of the draft, for example. And because of that, the market was cooler than it might have been a year or two ago. And thus, Justin Simmons is leaving for not even pennies on the dollar, but nothing on the dollar.
Yeah, it's definitely a sad day because you and I both have an adoration for Justin Simmons just as a man, right? We'll take his all pro on the field, the Pro Bowl performance, but just as the type of guy you want on your team, coming out of Boston College. Not many of those picks have hit from back in those Elway drafts, but he was one to hit big.
Yeah, day 2 pick, Shrine Bowl player. I had to mention that. If I didn't mention it, you would.
Yes.
And spent the first year watching behind TJ Ward and Darian Stewart. I mean, it was his ascendance that made one of the safeties from the no-fly zone expendable, and ultimately it was TJ Ward who got released right before the 2017 season. A big part of the reason was that Justin Simmons was right on his heels. And so you had him as a starter for 7 seasons here, became one of the more decorated safeties in the NFL. And, I mean, really, he has kind of a dubious honor in Broncos history as the best player of the, quote, world of suck era, unquote. Of course, it was Vic Fangio using that phrase and then Emmanuel Sanders repeating it. It's been a world of suck, but doesn't mean that there weren't good players. Justin Simmons happened to be one of them. He arrives right as you're cleaning up the confetti, and he never got to the playoffs. It's kind of it's been wonderful to watch him, but it's also a sad story in Broncos country.
And Mace, that's where I come in and say, like, I'm happy for him to perhaps go somewhere and be part of maybe even a contender, like a Super Bowl contender, a Baltimore. I don't want to say Kansas City, but like, I'm happy that Justin now has that opportunity. And with all these safeties released, I'm going to bring up a couple of more names that aren't released, but will just not be retained by their teams, according to reports. Xavier McKinney from the Giants, Jordan Whitehead with the Jets. So those are safeties that, like, they weren't released. Their contract's just up, and their team's not going to keep them. So again, now Justin enters a market. The Jordan Poyer move I know is tough for Bills fans out there. My best friend's a Bills fan, and he was lamenting that move. But like, okay, Justin's going to face a flooded market, but he's going to have the opportunity with his All Pros and Pro Bowls to kind of pick the right spot for him.
And the other thing is, because the Broncos cut him, there are teams that may take a longer look at him and then some of the other players, like it is Xavier McKinney, because McKinney means adding somebody who would factor into the compensatory pick calculus. Justin Simmons being a street free agent doesn't do that. And so that gives him value, even though he is on the other side of 30, and that's usually a danger zone. I mean, McKinney is 25 years old, but he's had more injuries than Simmons. I think he's going to have value, and I wouldn't all surprise me if he knows his destination even before the start of free agency. Like if the groundwork gets laid this weekend and maybe on Monday, in addition to all the stuff that comes out when the legal tampering period opens, we learn that Justin Simmons is headed to a specific somewhere, but that we don't know yet. But it's a sad day. But here's the thing, Cease. People have been calling for a teardown and rebuild in Broncos country for a while. Here it is. It's like everyone talks about it, but when the pain comes, like, oh, whoa, no. No.
Right.
Tear down and rebuild has people been screaming it from the rooftops. And make no mistake, this is a rebuild. Now it's a rebuild where I think the Broncos will avoid the kind of bottoming out type of season that some teams have, in part because they're going to be resourceful and they're going to win some games you don't expect, kind of like last year. Like I view a step. I call it a half step backwards. I think they probably end up around 6-11. I think and I think maybe 6 wins is the floor. 6-7 wins.
Mm-hmm.
I think in other words, their win total drops, but not to the point where we're saying, oh, you got the number 1 overall pick, which is another reason why you have to have the conversation about quarterback in this year's draft. Now, that being said, I've already seen some of it on social media. If you're going to tear it down, do you really trade next year's first round pick? If it's for a quarterback, you do.
Yeah.
Because the quarterback quality that you get by trading up 3, 6, 8 spots, potentially, I don't think it's going to be matched what you could get by picking in the top 2 or 3 next year.
Watch what they do, not what they say, Mace. But they have said how much they like PJ Locke. Mm-hmm. How does that factor into this Justin Simmons decision? Which, again, like you mentioned, all the fans belaboring, oh my God, like you can't ride 2 horses with one ass, Sugar Plum. Like you got to rebuild. You got cap space. You were going to have to do this. You probably inquired at the combine if you could trade him. You couldn't trade him. So this is where we're at. But what does Locke factor into this decision, in your opinion?
Potentially, but if you're going to get him done before other teams get involved, you better do it by Monday. You've still got the exclusive negotiating window that's in play over the weekend. But the other factor is you got cap space to clear. By the way, you're not clear just yet. And that's clear to get to compliance, let alone actually starting to sign and re-sign, right?
Right.
I mean, you want PJ Locke back. I think they do. Elsewhere on the roster, they're high on JL Skinner. They're intrigued by JL Skinner. They will make some targeted free agent additions, but if you want to ensure that you're keeping a guy like PJ Locke, you got to make sure everything is in place cap-wise, which means, I think I saw on overthecap.com, there's still a couple $1 million over the projected cap for this year. Right. Yeah, this is not the last move. Now, there are going to be some restructures. I think you will see a restructure of at least one of Mike McGlinchey, Ben Powers, Zach Allen. At least one. You could do 3 and get all 3 and get, I believe, $27 million of space potentially. I don't think they'll do all 3, but I think you'll see at least one.
Okay.
Those make sense because in all likelihood, especially with Powers and Zach Allen, these are players who are going to be here for the life of their contract. So you can make that work without having a year of quote unquote dead money. There may be another restructure beyond that does create some dead money if you move on. So I'd keep an eye on that. DJ Jones is another name that's going to come into play. You can cut him and save just under $10 million. Of course, then if you do that, that means you got to bring in other defensive linemen. We'll see what the Broncos do about that. And we know tight end is a need that they're going to have to address and want to address one way or another. Saw Jonnu Smith go off the market, by the way.
Miami.
Yeah. That's a name that I think might have made some sense if the Broncos went for a free agent tight end. Try to upgrade that room. So we got that to take care of. And I do think, I want to run this by you, Cease. I think there's a move made at wide receiver, and maybe not just moving on from Tim Patrick. or a massive redo on the rest of his contract. I think there's a move coming with either Courtland Sutton or Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, fans would say Jerry. I say it's Court, and I'm going to say it's a trade. Now, could be totally wrong, Mace. I thought Justin Simmons might have a trade market, perhaps the highest of the tradable assets that you would have. There wasn't one there. Maybe that's the same case for Sutton, but for me, you get a 5th round pick, a 4th round pick. I don't want to go too high for Sutton. That would make me happy-ish.
Yeah. You know what, though? Should have made deals last season. You look back and maybe those 2 wins right before the bye over Green Bay and Kansas City were the worst thing that could have happened. Because you could have dealt Jerry Jeudy. I don't know if you would have gotten a 3rd round pick and a day 3 pick, but you probably could have gotten a 3rd round pick. If you dealt Justin Simmons then, I think you probably could have gotten some draft capital. Again, it's supply and demand. There's a greater supply of safeties out there, thus demand is going to be lower. I mean, if you went to college, you took Econ 101 at some point. This is basic stuff. At the trade deadline, there is lower supply and greater demand. Right now, higher supply. Yeah, long term, those 2 wins might have cost the Broncos a lot of draft capital.
Yep. Not only in where they would be drafting, but also just getting rid of guys that now you can't get rid of. I don't know if they can get rid of Sutton. Maybe they could. One player, and you mentioned how Powers, Zach Allen, I think we need to look at the on-ramp here. You and I have talked about, like, when Sean Payton's going to have this team competitive, is Ben Powers going to be part of the team? Yes. Justin Simmons, it was clearly no. But there's a player that we're staring at, and I think both you and I agree, Garrett Bolles needs to stick around, and he's one of those guys you would consider to restructure, move some of his money around, lower that cap number, and perhaps keep him around for the early part of the on-ramp. I don't know how much Garrett has left. He's always been an older prospect. That's one of the problems with him coming out, is that he was a couple of years older. But that's another name we need to be thinking about here.
Yeah, it's interesting on Garrett Bolles. So he's going to be 32 this year. But there is a real clear value for what Garrett Bolles brings right now. And that is that last year, he was an above average left tackle if you rank the 32 starters, he is you'd probably say he was about 10th to 12th. Okay.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. He was an above average left tackle on a unit that was 3rd in run block win rate and 8th in pass block win rate. Okay. Now you're going to move on from Lloyd Cushenberry. That seems pretty obvious right now. And if it were up to me, I'd be finding a way to move some pieces around and keep him, but they may want a little more power from the center position than Cush can provide. Okay. But if you're in that environment, you got to keep as many people as you can. Garrett Bolles, I think you could probably work out an extension because he's in the last year of his deal, so it's not a restructure. It'd be an extension to add a year or 2 onto that and get that cap figure down. Right now on the 2024 salary cap, you're looking at a number for Garrett Bolles that's $20 million. Okay. Can you extend that by 2 years? Kick in some more money guaranteed. Kick in maybe it's a 15 or 20 million guarantee, and that's one thing. Where it's good to have owners like this that you throw some more guaranteed cash on there. Boom. All right, you're not having to move pieces around to do it. So give him a little guarantee. Knock that cap figure down from 20 million this year to 10, right? And I'd say kind of play into the whole to maybe you play into Garrett Bolles' strength of association. I mean, he likes being a Denver Bronco. He likes being in Denver. His family likes being in the Denver area.
Right. And he'll play his ass off for you because you believed in him. And that was always the big thing with Garrett. I know a team took him off the board because of whatever, but it's like the thing with Garrett Bolles, the magic mix that Munchak figured out is like, love him up, man. Love him up. He'll play good football. Teach him. He'll learn. He'll listen, but love him up. He really appreciates that loyalty, and he'll give you loyalty back.
And he'll do what he's asked. You ask him to do something, he'll go out.
He'll go out and do it. That's what Garrett Bolles does as Mace is back.
That's happened 3 times today.
3 times.
And I was, and the thing is, it's weird. You never faded at my end. It wasn't like, oh, it's, cloudy, low quality. No, it's just like went away, came back. Like magic.
It's magic having you on the show.
Aww. Some things in life are magical. You know that, right?
That is true. And when you find magic, Mace, you enjoy it. You appreciate it, right? And there's some magic here with Garrett Bolles, and what he's been able to do, all the struggles he's been through. We get the message out. That's what we do on this show. But okay, how can they figure it out? It's painful. But again, I think your point about rebuild, you were going to have to do this.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We all love Justin. I wish him well. Nothing but the best. But this was going to happen. And as soon as Seattle let go of Diggs and Adams, Mace, we didn't get to talk about it on the show because we talked about so much. But as soon as the Seattle let go of their 2 safeties, I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
You flood the market with safeties. That's bad for a trade market. And that's been bad for the Broncos dealing Justin Simmons because they couldn't do it.
Can we say that Seattle holds the Broncos once again?
Shaking our fist at the Northwest.
Seahawks!
Gone!
Yes. Old man yells at cloud,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Simpsons.
The Grandpa Simpson meme. Yeah. Oh, those dastardly Seahawks, right?
They did it to us again.
Yeah. Oh, and I would have gotten something for Simmons too if it hadn't been for your meddling Seahawks. We're just gonna
Scooby-Doo.
Just go down the list. Oh,
let's do the Scooby-Doo ending. It's a sad day, but we gotta smile for Justin, and we gotta smile for the plan moving forward, right? Like, okay, this is gonna be a little bit of a rebuild. They're not gonna lose more than 10 games, I would say. And
I'd say 11. I'd put the floor at 11. And that is unless you have the asterisk I put on that is unless you have a season with a huge wave of injuries, which, as you and I have gathered, Broncos feel like their methodology is going to prevent that. Right.
They were happy with the results last year.
They were very happy with the results last year. I mean, there are some things you can't, it's going to be tough to prevent, broken bones and even ligament tears, but soft tissue, hamstring issues popping up over and over again. Aside from Greg Dulcich, by and large, the Broncos avoided those. So there's optimism and belief that their methodology will continue to get results.
Right.
I think they'll be very strong on special teams. I think they're still going to have a good offensive line. And we'll see what the moves are, but I expect their run defense will be better. And the other thing is people are like, of course, the lineup's going to be lesser because you're taking players out, this, that, and the other, and you're putting younger players in. Younger players don't stay still. They get better, right? They get better, or to use the quote from former Bills and Steelers GM Tom Donahoe, you get him good or you get him gone, right?
Yep.
So Drew Sanders, if he's rotating in at edge, they're going to get him good or they're going to get him gone. Riley Moss at corner, get him good or get him gone. Last year, they had Damari Mathis. He didn't get good, so he was gone to the bench. By the way, they're not completely devoid of hope that Damari can't put it back together. Basically, Damari's having a chance to reset. And look for Damari Mathis and Riley Moss to battle for a job.
Right.
In the starting lineup. So that's the thing. You're going to look. You might lose Courtland Sutton or Jerry Jeudy, right? If Marvin Mims can add a couple of branches to that route tree, Marvin Mims Jr., I think, can be a better player, right?
Yeah.
So, always in motion the future is.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. And that's why, I get right now, if you look at the lineup right now, yeah, it's the fourth best lineup in the AFC West. It's a lineup that's probably a bottom quarter lineup in the league at this point when you take Justin Simmons out. And if you take out one of those receivers. Doesn't mean it's going to stay that way.
Right.
And I also think there's another thing on Sean Payton. It's like, oh, well, he hasn't drafted a quarterback. Oh, he's generally gone with veterans. I think Sean Payton knows the situation is a little bit different now than it has been. This is not New Orleans. And oh, by the way, in New Orleans, they went 10-6 that first year. The next 2 years, they went 7-9, 8-8. Part of it was because they were trying to get the roster right. The 10-6 in 06 was an aberration. A lot of things broke right for that Saints team that didn't break their way the following 2 years, but they kept working on the roster, kept adding, kept bringing guys in, seeing if they worked out, if they didn't move on. And then by 09, they were a Super Bowl team. Now, the problem is that means 2 more years of this. Does Broncos country have the patience for it? I think they do if there's a direction. And that's where the young quarterback comes into play. If you draft a first-round quarterback, whether it's by standing pat at 12 or moving up, that's a direction. People are going to know it, and I think they'll give grace.
They'll add safety in the draft, perhaps even Trey Taylor from Air Force, who they talked to. And Mace, they're talking to a bunch of like day 3 corners. So I think day 3 corners on the list. But is there a chance, as we wrap up today's show, and I'll get a little Russell Wilson talk. I know, but don't talk about Russell Wilson. Okay, whatever. But like, is there a chance there's a free agent safety that they might get on the cheap? I don't think so. I think it's Locke. I think it's the draft. Do you have any inclination otherwise? Because they won't be very active in free agency. At least we predicted that. That's something everyone should anticipate. But is there somebody that makes it through a couple waves that maybe they would want? I can't personally think of any that I would want, other than, making sure you get Locke and then drafting a young guy, whether it's a Trey Taylor from Air Force or whoever.
I could be intrigued by Jeremy Chin, who was, really good as a rookie.
Love that name.
And then faded and missed 5 games last year in Carolina. I believe he is a cousin of Steve Atwater.
He is, yeah.
Yes. But that's not the reason why I would necessarily want him in there. I liked him coming out. He balled out at the Senior Bowl back in 2020.
And looked good as a rookie, like you mentioned. I love those type of reclamation projects. Like, hey, if we can get to this guy healthy, he can play.
Yeah, and I think, frankly, those are the types of players you ought to be looking at.
Yes.
Upside players, whether they've shown it before. In the case of Chin, we've seen the glimpse, right? Or somebody who, for whatever reason, you look at coaching, whatever, this is going to be what you're looking at here, especially when you're not going to the top of the market. It's players who are intriguing. You're in the scratch and dent pile, but doesn't mean that you can't find some really talented players. Jeremy Chin's a really talented player. So it was funny. You asked me that question, and I just kind of just quickly consulted my list because I'm like, I think Chin's a free agent, and he is.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the type of guy I think. If you gave me a safety room that had PJ Locke back, Jeremy Chin, JL Skinner.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can, and Caden Stearns coming back. Don't forget Caden Stearns. Now, again, there's hope there. It's like, oh, can he finally stay healthy? And he hasn't had an injury-free season in the last 6 years.
Since he was a freshman at Texas.
Yes, it's been a long time. But if you gave me a safety room led off by a Chin, Locke, Skinner, Stearns, I think you can find a good safety tandem out of that room.
And potentially even some good depth too.
I'll say this also. I will sleep much better at night if you bring PJ Locke back and you plug him in as a starter. I think that's PJ is your security blanket. He's reliable. He's been yelled at by Sean Payton. He stared it down. He kept on going, right? I mean, I think PJ also passed that test, which matters too.
Yes, yeah. Got to take a chewing when you're under Sean Payton. Let's bring up the NFL for sure.
Well, I'll tell you real quick. The late strength coach Alvin Roy, was strength coach for a long time. He said, in the NFL, you got to learn to take it. The men of the NFL know how to take it. If you're going to play for Sean Payton, you got to know how to take it.
Yep. That is 1,000% sure. We'll bring up Russell Wilson, perhaps meeting with the Steelers. I know the Diana Rossini report said they're not interested in veterans. I don't believe that. Nothing against Diana's reporting. It's Kenny Pickett staring at you with Mason Rudolph. Those aren't good options, Mace. And it's funny because you bring up Carolina with Chin. There was a Carolina reporter, and God bless all of them, and you know all of them, Mace, but like somebody reported out of Carolina, they're not interested in Russell Wilson. Well, yeah, no kidding. Because he'd take Bryce Young's job, and they don't want that. So, no to Carolina, yes to Pittsburgh, potentially, kind of like we thought.
Carolina's new coach, Dave Canales, specifically answered that question when he was on with Kay Adams a couple of days ago, and said, he liked Russell Wilson, but, and this is another thing to kind of think of with the Broncos, his window didn't match their window. Windows matter. This, and this year, and this is what this year is about. Kind of right now, it's about resetting, and then it's about growing. You are clearing the field. Okay, you got to clear the field before you can put the crop down. I'm not a farmer, but I know that.
Land. Yeah, you got to till the land.
Yeah, you got to till the land. You got to till things. But that's what you're doing right now. That's today. That's next week. Through the end of the month, you get to the draft. That's where you start planting some seeds, and some seeds need longer to grow, like the quarterback seed. Wide receiver seed can sprout up, right? Quarterback, you gotta tend to it, nurture it. You're planting the quarterback seed first day you can, and then you're harvesting it on the last day. Another reason why you need to take a quarterback right now in this year's draft. Because, oh, by the way, next year the conditions may not suit having a quarterback seed grow.
Right.
It might be like trying to grow tobacco, another Simpsons reference. And that actually, tobacco, you talk about like the Broncos have had kind of these, let's try to rebuild, reload, retool, restructure, yada, yada, yada.
The
Reboot. Vance Joseph said that, not a rebuild, it's reboot.
Yeah.
So they kept trying all these things. And I bring up tobacco because tobacco came out of desperation when nothing was growing, and Homer just throws seeds out there just for the heck of it, and then gets some plutonium shipped to him by his buddies back at the nuclear power plant. Okay? And if I can summarize the Broncos' attempts to rebuild over the years, these, looking for shortcuts, in 2019, this is in a piece I'm writing at denversports.com. In 2019, you're coming off 11-21 in the previous 2 years. You have a new coach, a good chance to reset, right? No, we're going to bring in Joe Flacco. And convince ourselves that he's just entering his prime. And then we're going to go spend money on Jawan James, who every other year misses substantial time because of injuries. And oh, by the way, he played nearly all the previous seasons. So guess what that pattern said was going to happen in 19, right? Kareem Jackson, good leader, good locker room presence. If you're trying to rebuild, why are you bringing in a year 10 safety and spending a lot on that position?
Right.
Melvin Gordon. I know Broncos country, you're going to wreck shit that name. Melvin Gordon, good guy to deal with, right? Why were you bringing in a veteran running back at that point?
Didn't they pay him like $7 million a year?
8.
Whatever the number was, it was too high. Sorry,
too high for a running back, right?
Yeah. Of that,
they just all these misaligned moves that were always about, let's see what we can wring out here. Let's we think we're close, and you're not close. And what I like about today, as much as it hurts, Today represents a direction. Make that clear. It represents a direction. They're not planting tobacco seeds. They actually know what the heck they're putting in the ground now.
And does their ascent time up with the decline of Kansas City? It's a larger topic for a different time. We're out of time. Orange and Blue today here on YouTube. We're growing our YouTube channel. And the fact that you guys love this show, it means a lot. Mason and I, we love the response from you guys. Like, it just, Mace, I'll speak from the heart. Like, I love it, man, because this is a dream come true working with you. We've always talked about this. Now we get to do it, and people like it. It's just like cake and frosting and ice cream. It's like all the good stuff, right? From our audience, from our response.
Don't have too much sweet stuff, though.
Let me finish. Yeah. How many times do I talk about dessert and then I don't end up getting it?
I know you got it last week.
I did. Right. I broke the rules.
Yeah, but you know, that's Indianapolis. What happens in Indy stays in Indy, usually.
Most of the time. He's Andrew Mason. You follow him on all the socials, but help us out on YouTube first by doing what, Mace?
Like, comment, share, subscribe. Hit that notification bell so that you never miss a vid.
There you go.
That was okay.
That's all right.
Yeah.
We'll do it in a pinch. He's Andrew Mason. Follow him on all the socials at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammey saying thanks for watching. Stay tuned, and would you please